Hello, bonjour. Welcome to Pardon Our French with Quincy and Justine, where we give you the 411 on everything Paris.
We're back for episode 2. Thanks for tuning in. We're so excited to delve into what to expect when you first land in Paris. Essentially everything that goes into setting up life in France.
We're going to delve into finding an apartment and everything that goes into that. Carte vitale, what is that and why it's amazing, but it's very difficult to set up.
Very difficult to set up.
And visas, which will be mostly Quincy.
Yes, I'm currently down in the visa dungeon right now.
Yeah.
So right now I'm very lucky to be living in a family friend's apartment, and I pay sort of a family-friendly rate. It's very central because we both live right in the second arrondissement. But I have not always had that apartment. I first moved into that apartment in 2020 because the family actually had an attempted break-in, and they were in California because of COVID. And so they were like, oh, we'd love to have some very responsible college student move in. And so that was I was like, oh, twist my arm. I'll move into this beautiful apartment. Yeah. But before that, I lived in an apartment in the 14th. So that's farther out. It's a nice neighborhood, but it's just
very residential.
It's very residential. There's nothing going on. It's kind of far away.
It's in the south, right?
Yeah, it's in the south.
Yeah.
And I liked the apartment. It was decent sized for me. I found it on this website called Paris Attitude, which is a good place to find an apartment if you're a foreigner because they actually let you pay with credit card. So you wouldn't need a French bank account, and you're able to just pay every month online, which is very easy. And it kind of cuts out, in France, you need to have a guarantor. Mm-hmm. Is that the same word in English? Yeah.
A cosigner.
A cosigner. And basically it's very hard, and a lot of people will turn you away if you don't have a French guarantor. And so Paris Attitude was a great place for me at first to get this first apartment, but it was very overpriced, and there were agency fees that were just so unnecessary. Yeah. So it's definitely a ripoff. If you were to come
nice when you really don't have another choice, because then they can basically co-sign for you.
Yeah. And before that, I lived with a host mother in her spare room, which was, oh boy.
Was that when you first got here?
Yes.
Okay.
And I had a great host family experience when I lived in Rennes in high school. That family was incredible. I'm actually still in touch with them today. And so I was kind of expecting a similar vibe. But unlike them, this woman was clearly just in it for the money, which a lot of them are. And so I actually ended up leaving that apartment before our contract because she was actually kind of mean to me. And it was just a miserable environment. So I wanted to get out of that. And that's when I moved into the apartment in the 14th.
So a good example that there are great experiences and not so great experiences.
Yeah. Then again, I have tons of friends who came to study abroad and had host families who were wonderful. Mm-hmm. So it's really, a lot of programs will provide families that they know and that are vetted to some extent. I found this one on my own. You have had some.
Okay, so I did come here while COVID was in full blast. So it was really hard. It was also really stressful because I was looking for an apartment from the U.S. And when you're not in France, you can't visit things. People can't meet you. It's not the same. They can't call you. It's more risky to have you sign an apartment when you're abroad because you never know what can happen.
Yeah.
If your flight gets canceled and you can't get there or whatnot. So I was frantically looking for 3 weeks before I came, literally the 3 weeks before I was supposed to come to Paris.
Yeah.
And I was looking on websites. I didn't look at Paris Attitude. I looked more on Sologer.fr, Pap.fr, Le Bon Coin even, which I don't think I would recommend for apartments because you could get
foreigners.
Scammed. Yeah. But I found something on Pap. I was looking to stay in the 11th or the Marais area, 3 or 4 arrondissement because my school was in the 18th and I didn't want to live in the 18th. It's a little bit sketchier. It's up and coming for sure, but it's also further out.
There are a lot more people trying to talk to you on the street in the 18th.
Yeah. So I knew the 11th borders the 18th and the 20th, and I knew the neighborhood quite well because I had stayed with somebody. That's a whole other story we're gonna go into. But basically, I had lived with someone in the 11th, and I basically found an apartment that was down the street, really 2 blocks away. So I felt comfortable. I was I know this area. Yeah. I know what I'm going into. These people are super nice. It was an agency representing the landlord.
Yeah.
But the fee for the agency was not extreme. It was I think $100
Yeah, mine was like hundreds per month on Paris Attitude. Like
it's terrible.
It's like I recommend that place, but I also don't because it's such a ripoff. But like if you are coming to stay for maybe a year, I would say it's worth it.
Yeah.
But if you're actually coming to stay for longer or for good, it's find a different solution.
Very expensive, yeah. And even my apartment, it was like it's in the 11th, so it's a nice neighborhood, but it's not like central.
Yeah.
And I had 32 meters square, which is pretty small. It's basically a bedroom, a living room, and I had a tiny kitchen.
Yeah.
And it was still like $1,200 a month.
Yeah, my 28 meter square apartment in the 14th was $1,300 a month.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really expensive.
Yeah, especially for that area. I'm like, it's far out in the boondocks.
Dang. Well, yeah, you can find anything between like a studio for like $850 to $900 depending on the area to, $2,000, $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
So I found that apartment. It was on the 5th floor, no elevator, which for those of you who don't know the French like stairs system, it's actually 6 floors because the first floor that we know is called the ground floor in France. So
it's basically 0, and then you go up, and that's the first floor.
Yeah.
And I actually, in my building, I have something else. I have the entresol.
Yeah.
So it's my floor. I'm on the 5th floor, but it's technically, in American standards, it's the 7th floor.
Yeah. So I found this apartment. The agency woman was so nice. And so I was very excited. I was like, oh, great. I have like a great landlord experience, except for he only uses the agencies for when he's trying to book in the apartment. And once it's booked, she left. And my communication was only with him. Which he was not very helpful because he didn't live in Paris. He lived way outside of Paris.
Okay.
And every time I needed something fixed, like it wouldn't get fixed.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So I had doorknobs that didn't work. The like knob to my window to like open the window would like fly off if you tried to pull too hard. And I literally used a nail. I used like a literal nail to keep it onto the thing. What else? The floor had a hole in it. There was a hole in the floor. Like every time if you walked on it, you'd like sink down into the hardwood.
That apartment did have so many issues.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a hot mess, but it was like, it looked nice.
It was super cute.
You made it look nice, but it was like...
Well, it was like Haussmannian style, so like super pretty, like moldings.
Yeah, like classic Parisian.
It was gorgeous. I had stained glass windows in my living room. It was gorgeous. I loved that apartment. It was a great first experience of like really understanding the realities of things.
Let's talk a little bit about when people are visiting Paris, what best neighborhoods to stay in.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have a lot of people coming and they always ask me, or like some people will tell me after they've booked and they're like, oh, I'm staying on the Champs-Elysees.
Or like,
oh my God, why did you do that?
By the Eiffel Tower.
No. Like, oh,
don't stay there.
Bad.
The Eiffel Tower is
Steer clear.
Yeah. The neighborhood, gorgeous. Amazing apartments.
Yeah.
The Eiffel Tower is beautiful. You want it to be like your view out the window.
Yeah.
There is nothing to do in those neighborhoods.
And there's so I work right next to the Eiffel Tower now. And it's just like a dead zone. There's no good food. It's all overpriced. It's all disgusting.
Yeah.
It's just you do not want to be staying there. And you do not want to stay on the Champs-Elysees.
No.
For God's sakes.
It's literally only tourists.
I never go over there ever. Like, I don't think I've been over there in like 3 years.
No. And even when my friends visit, I'm like, you can go see that on your own. Yeah. I really do not need to go over there.
Yeah. No,
my internship was there, so I was there every day as well.
Yeah. No, but it's just so unnecessary. Do not stay there.
No.
Our recommended places, I always tell people stay in the Marais, in the 3rd and 4th. Stay either, I say 1st through 6th usually to people.
Same, yeah.
1st through 6th arrondissement.
If you look at like the map of Paris, they call it an escargot or a snail shell because basically if you start at the 1, it goes into a spiral and it like goes out like to the higher numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the like central ones around the river. And they have like the most fun things to do. So many restaurants, so much shopping. Those are the areas you're going to hang out in when you're here.
And I think that in terms of the neighborhoods that look like most what you would imagine Paris to look like, I think the 6th.
Yeah, 5 and 6.
Very like 5, 6. And then also the Marais aussi.
Yeah, I think it's
That's a little bit different, but like very quintessential Paris would be the 6th.
Absolutely.
I lived there for a hot sec.
That's like your idyllic Paris neighborhoods that are clean and so beautiful. And we're like Café Flore and De Magot.
In general, the left bank is a lot. Like the left bank bougie. Is the more like bougie, like what you would expect, like the very quintessential Paris. And then the right bank, which is where we live, is a bit more like authentic, a bit more,
There's a mixture of like different kind of people and like vibes around. There's like a vibe for everyone, really.
Exactly. And that's why even though like coming from New York, I never feel that Paris is small because each neighborhood has a different vibe and like I still haven't explored some of them. Like,
we stay in our own and there's still things to explore. So yeah.
It's so central, it's hard to leave.
Yeah.
And if you're coming just for a little bit, like get an Airbnb,
Yeah.
stay at a hotel, whatever you want to do.
And it is expensive, so if you're on a budget, I'd say maybe like the 11th, 10th would be good to stay in. Because they're on the border of those like arrondissement districts.
Yeah.
And there's still cool neighborhoods to be in.
Yeah.
And you're not far. There are metro lines that will take you into the center easily, or you just walk. It's like 25 max.
Okay, so now that we've told you guys everything that we know about apartments, basically. Well, we wanted to talk about the carte vitale, which is a healthcare card, which is essentially connected to your social security number here and allows you to get reimbursed for all the healthcare that you receive in France, including prescriptions, which is amazing. I did not have this for like the first 2 years I lived here, but then
I don't know how you did without it.
Okay, but when you go into the pharmacy and you buy something without a healthcare, the carte vitale, it's still only like $10.
Yeah, it's so cheap.
It's not an imposition.
No, it's true.
So it's like, I remember getting like a couple weeks of antibiotics and I was like, oh, that'll be €4.
Yeah.
What?
I know. It's wild.
I'm still like that at the counter. Like they will hand me a pile of stuff that I have and they're like, oh, that'll be €12.
Gosh.
Incroyable. So that's without the card. You can get a lot without the card because in France they actually regulate medication and stuff like that a lot better than they do in the US. And so you can survive for a long time without the card.
Yeah.
That being said, it is nice to have this card because it automatically like backfills into your bank and just gives you the money back.
But the carte vitale is really important to have, so you have to do this because, yes, day-to-day prescriptions and things like that aren't that expensive, or like doctor's appointments, etc. But if anything, like, hopefully never does, but if it does happen, a bad like accident or whatnot, you need to stay in the hospital, that can be so expensive.
Yeah.
And as people who are in the US know how expensive nights at a hospital could be. It's not different in France because it is the same kind of care that you're going to be receiving. But with the carte vitale, you would be reimbursed. Unlike France, where the US, where you have to like fight your insurance to like cover like not even half of what you had to pay.
Yeah, no, totally. Also, you told me this the other day. Our social security numbers automatically start with either a 1 or a 2, depending on your sex.
Yeah. Guess who's 2?
This made me like burn. I literally went and got my purse and checked my card, and I was like, it starts with a 2. These sexist people. Setting it up is hard.
Mine took a while because I needed to bring my original birth certificate to France to upload these to the like account, and there was something bugging with my passport because it said I was born in California, but it was my French passport, and they were like, this does not make sense.
They just don't know what to do with that. Yeah. If you have anything that's out of the standard, they have no idea how to deal with it.
Yeah.
They literally had a conniption because my birth certificate says, so I have a capital S in my last name. So my birth certificate has it all together, but then my passport separates the Mac and the Shane because like that's how they like show a capital letter in the middle of a name on a passport. And so the carte vitale people said, can you go get a different birth certificate? Like this one is not up to snuff. I was like, it's a birth certificate. And I'm like, I do think it is important to talk about like the differences between like what you will get out of like a French healthcare provider versus an American one. And this frustrates me sometimes, but also like I understand it and I think it does make a lot of sense.
I mean, it's frustrating because we're so used to it.
Yeah, because we're so used to it in the US. In the US, you can get like anything at the snap of a finger, but
it's like there's a pill to cure everything.
Yeah, exactly. And in France, because the doctors are not making loads of money off of you as a patient.
It's just more regulated.
Yeah, it's more regulated, and they're not like looking to make money off of you, and so in that way, they aren't going to be pushing pills on every problem, and they're likely to treat you in a very like step-by-step process. They're not going to jump to do a lot of tests if they don't think or they don't see yet that is necessary.
Yeah. Or they'll do a bunch of tests to really find out what's wrong instead of trying like giving you a pill to try, and if it doesn't work, you come back.
Yeah, exactly. In Europe, they just they are not going to prescribe you stuff. They're not going to give you tests that they don't think that you need. And, if you do want to go be tested for X, Y, or Z, you have to have a doctor actually prescribe that. You can't just walk in and say, I'd like to get this done.
Yeah, if you go into a lab, you can't just have tests done. You have to go to your like generalist, who then gives you like a prescription to go get the test.
Yeah.
Or see another specialist, like a dermatologist.
But most importantly, and I think most relevantly to a lot of people, if you're coming to stay for more than 3 months as Americans, is the visa issue. Mm-hmm. I am currently really having some visa problems. So I've been on a student visa since I got here, and I've just been like switching them up when they end. I just apply for another, and student visas are very rarely rejected because it's like you're enrolled, they get it. It's a very like
most people who come to Paris will enroll in a school just to have a student visa to get them started.
Exactly. And I really, I was always studying. There was that 1 year I was doing my classes from the US, and so I actually enrolled in a French language school despite being already fluent in French. And I went like 60% of the time. But so now is my first time that I'm going to be switching off of a student visa. And my job is an international organization. And basically they need to sponsor me a diplomatic visa. Mm-hmm. But to do so, I need to surrender my student visa because you can't have 2 visas going at once.
Which sounds like it wouldn't be very difficult to do.
Yeah, you would think that you could just go in, hand it in. They'd be like, check you off. Okay, you're done. No.
Yeah.
I have been chasing these hooligans around.
Ce n'est pas possible.
Every freaking possible, I've been filling out all these online forms, and the problem is that now all the visa system is all like online, which you think, oh, that's so great. Mm-hmm. No. No. Because if you don't have a very standard case, which obviously a diplomatic visa is not a standard case, and so they just like have no idea how to deal with you. There's no avenue. It's basically like, oh, click A, B, and C. Which one is your case? If you're not in there,
we're not dealing with you. We're not even going to try to help you.
So I've been they have help numbers. And so I call them and I say, oh, could you help me set up an appointment because I need to surrender this visa. I explain. Mm-hmm. And they're basically like, we don't do anything over the phone. And I'm like, okay, but yes, I understand that. Mm-hmm. However, no. Yeah. You can email this email, whatever, and then they never get back to you.
They will literally spit that in the spams and be done.
Yeah, they really will. And so then I, of course, go to the prefecture knowing all well and good that they will not let you near that place without an appointment. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, this is my only option now. Yeah. And so I go up, and I mean, it must be like a prerequisite of working there to just be like the most insufferable people you've ever met. For God's sakes, I'm sorry.
And but honestly, French people agree. This is not just
No, this
American...
is a well-known thing. My boss was like, oh, this is like a national sport is trying to have people deal with the préfecture.
And it's like if you tell someone you're going, they're like, ah, bonne chance.
Yeah, literally. I don't think I've ever left there not in tears. For literally this past time
or
included.
Just infuriated.
Yeah, no. So I walk up and I'm like, the first thing is they're like, vous avez un rendez-vous? Mm-hmm. Non, j'ai pas de rendez-vous, mais en fait, and then I go in and I explain everything, and they're like,
put the hand in your face.
Yeah, literally. The second you say no, they're like,
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but just hear me out. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, oh, we'll go and fill out the formulaire. Yeah. Bah, je l'ai déjà fait. And so then I'm looking for it, and I show him.
Yeah.
I show him, and he's like, oh, you didn't fill out the right one. Well, don't worry, because I filled out 7 of them. I have been in this country for long enough that I know these people. I know them.
Good
and so I'm like,
you.
I have filled out every freaking possible version of this formulaire, and I have the receipts. I'm showing this man the receipts. He's so mad. And then he's like, well, call the number. I said, I already called them. Yeah. He goes, call again. And then I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And I'm saying that I've basically exhausted every resource I have. And this is the point at which he is standing 5 feet away from me, and he just pretends not to hear me.
No.
And I'm like, excuse me, I'm really just here to get some help. This is what you guys are here for. Yeah. Could you please help me? I've really tried to do everything, and I'm staying calm as I can be. Because they
Yeah.
And there's a police officer standing there, and he comes over to me and he shoves me and he goes, ma'am, we have to clear the perimeter. This is,
you're in the way.
Yeah. And I'm like, I am not a threat. Yeah. I'm standing here in my Madewell loafers. I'm not about to run down the gates of the prefecture.
And honestly, I've seen people in the offices get mad, and nobody says anything.
Yeah.
There are mad people in there.
Yeah. But I'm like, it is enough to make you want to go insane.
Yeah. I mean, the stupidest thing, I needed an ID card, right?
Yeah.
It's just easier to travel around with an ID card rather than your passport everywhere you go. So I'd go and I have literally every piece of information. Everything's good. And it's like they really search for the one thing you fucked up on because they decided to tell me that the photo I took, everything was fine except for you couldn't see clothing around my neck because I was wearing...
I thought you're naked.
I don't know. I mean, have you seen an ID picture? It's literally your neck up. Am I supposed to wear a turtleneck?
I'm dead.
She was like, I don't know if this is going to pass because you're not clothed and you need to have some clothing.
Stop.
I was like, bitch, it literally says you can't wear turtlenecks on here. Like, so what am I supposed to do?
That's insane. No, they can be sticklers about stuff like in these appointments. They're just trying to give you, and they are trying to give you a hard time. Like I remember the first time I renewed my student visa, you go in person at that time before they moved it all online. And they give you a whole list of what to bring. So you like can be as prepared as you want. And then you sit down and they start asking you for things that aren't on the list.
Yep.
She was like, oh, can I see your phone record? And I'm like, oh, I don't have that. And she turns to the lady next to her and she's like, you see what I have to deal with?
Yeah.
She doesn't have anything.
Or they start whispering like...
Yeah. And I'm like, I speak French. Thank you very much. And then it's like, oh, do you have the copy of your passport? Yes, of course. Here it is. How about the copy of the copy? Ma'am.
Make a copy right now.
Make a copy right now. Fast forward, imagine me like trying to break into the library at this school where this visa center was and like having this French girl have to photocopy my passport because I wasn't allowed in because I don't go to the school.
Wow.
And they will be difficult, but now I'm like so prepared.
Yeah.
Like during COVID, especially like getting back into France, you had to have all your what's it called? The passe sanitaire, and you have to have all this stuff and
like vaccine records.
Yeah, at the time they also
COVID tests.
they didn't let you in if you like weren't living there. So I like printed out copies of my apartment lease, my passe sanitaire, my visa, like all this stuff to like smack it down on the counter when they say like, oh, you're not allowed
Tell me
in.
I don't live here.
Yeah, exactly. So I've gotten used to it, but I am definitely having a much harder time than I've had up until this point. And I think I'm gonna have to go back to the U.S. to request a visa at the consulate.
That's
so
terrible. I feel so bad because I have a passport, so everything's easy for me.
Cries an immigrant. No, I really understand because I'm very like adamantly not like I think a lot of people assume that, at least in my experience, they assume that I came here for someone. Mm-hmm.
That's the first question you get.
Yeah. For instance, this doctor I went to once just assumed, and he goes, "You and your husband." I was like, "When did I say I have a husband?"
Yeah.
And that is something like when I do get citizenship, I do want it to be on my own, merit. But given all these issues, I'm like reconsidering the pax or the the mariage. In France, a pax is basically like a non-religious marriage.
Yeah.
They started it a bunch of years ago. I think it was originally for gay couples to be able to get married.
In separation of like church and state.
Yeah, in separation of the church. But now it is used by a lot of people who just don't want to have a marriage that is within the cadre of a religion, which I do not want. So if I do end up getting married to someone, I would want a pax instead of the classique mariage. So I think next episode we should talk about dating in France, our experiences. Obviously, mine more turbulent, shall we say, than yours.
That's only because I found someone really quickly.
Yeah, very luckily.
Definitely not the plan, but things happen.
He's squinting over here.
I mean, you knew I wasn't looking for anything.
Yeah, but we'll talk about like how we meet people, if there are noticeable differences. There are
so many.
And sort of where we are currently.
Yeah. So that being said, à bientôt.
Au revoir.